3 reasons why I would avoid buying off-the-plan units right now. Hi, it's Nero here from Investment Rise, and over the last couple of weeks, I've had a few people reach out to me and say that they've been recommended to buy an off-the-plan unit. And when I asked why, the reasons they were given was that, number one, they don't have to worry about getting their finance approved. They can get their finance approved in a year or 2 years' time whenever the unit is due for completion. So they don't have to worry about their job security necessarily, or they don't have to worry about banks having funky lending restrictions at the moment and all of that. And to me, that's really, really risky. And so that's why in this video, I want to talk about 3 reasons why I would avoid buying off-the-plan units right now. Number 1, there's a huge problem with vacancy rates at the moment in many areas where there are massive high-rise apartment blocks. Okay, so the suburbs themselves might be really good quality suburbs, but due to the vacancy issue, buying an off-the-plan unit in these suburbs can be really risky. For example, we've got suburbs like Chatswood, where a brand new unit completed right now in a massive high-rise, a 2-bedroom unit is actually renting many of them for less than a second-hand unit was back nearly 10 years ago. Plus, there are many investors or property owners who are offering 2 weeks free rent, any kind of incentive just to try and get a tenant. Now, if that's the current state of the market and it's expected only to get worse, why would you want to then go and buy a off-the-plan unit right now? You're going to be competing with everyone else who have bought these units. You're going to have issues again with getting the rent that you expect, and your cash flow is going to be shot. So buying an off-the-plan unit, especially as a safe investment, as a cash flow investment, bad idea. Stay away from it. Number 2. The capital growth predictions at the moment for many parts of Australia is really low. Now, I think a lot of those predictions though are citywide or nationwide. They're just taking averages of different suburbs. But one of the things you'll find is that different suburbs will perform differently. And the suburbs where there is significant concentration of high-rise units, significant apartment buildings for sale, the kind of thing that perhaps you're thinking about buying as an off-the-plan unit, those are the suburbs that are going to be impacted massively from a capital growth perspective. In fact, I think many of those suburbs will have a slight reversal in price, or prices will fall in those suburbs. Now, why do I say those suburbs where there's a high concentration of units? It's because supply and demand. There's so much supply coming online at the moment. We know immigration is essentially not happening, which Sydney and Melbourne, their markets have really been, I guess, underpinned by the massive immigration that we've had. And now that's dwindling. I think you'll see many areas of Sydney and Melbourne where the apartments were really heavily bought into by people from overseas. You're going to struggle in those suburbs. So capital growth is going to be a negative. All right, so you buy something right now, and if it's worth less than you paid for it in a year's time or 2 years' time, why would you want to go and buy that kind of investment? I think off-the-plan unit is very risky from a capital growth perspective. Number 3, one of the biggest risks I see at the moment with buying an off-the-plan unit is that you don't need your finance approved right now. Many people think this is an advantage. I actually think it's a risk. Here's why. We don't know what banks will do in the future when it comes to lending on property. See, many banks right now are offering the opportunity to freeze your loan for existing homeowners or even existing investors. And so somewhere down the track, they're going to have to collect on that money. They may want to focus on higher quality loans from their perspective. They may not want as much exposure to apartments. Plus, we've seen in the past where you buy an apartment for example, say in 2017, you bought an apartment for $800,000. A year later, it's completed, and the bank values it at only $750,000. Now, what are you going to do? You need to come up with an extra $50K from your own back pocket or your own equity if you've got it. And if you don't, you lose your deposit. Right? One of the worst examples I heard was someone who bought a 2-bedroom unit in around the airport. She paid $1.23 million, which means she had to put a 10% deposit down, which is $123,000. Yet 2 years later, when the property was completed and she went to get a loan, the bank valued this property that she purchased for 1.23 million. The bank valued it at like $950,000. She had to come up with the difference, and she didn't have it. So she had to walk away from a $123,000 deposit. I see that happening more and more going forwards for many people who have bought off the plan units. So why would you want to look at off the plan unit? Now, many people say, yeah, but Nero, but what's the other option? I mean, you've said in your past videos that we should look at houses, but my budget only stretches so far. So what should we do? Here's what I would say. I see so many investors saying, I can't afford a house, I'll buy a unit. Or units are easier. But remember, you've also got the other issue that we've seen in the past with many of these high-rise units having very low quality of construction. If you can't afford a house in the particular city or market that you're currently looking at, my recommendation is don't go and look for a unit instead. Rather, go and look at a different market. Stick to houses because they're not making any more land. Banks have certainly shown a preference for houses when looking at giving you loans. And if that's what a bank wants, they probably understand something about the market, right? So if you can focus on houses, look outside of the area that you're living in, get the right advice if you're not sure about an area. Don't just buy by thinking you can just do some free research on the internet or on a property website. You need to get the right guidance, but certainly stay away from the unit market. Start looking at other areas and stick to houses, because I think even now in middle of May, we're certainly starting to see that some of those predictions for prices to fall, it's not universal. There are certain suburbs that are doing extremely well. They're even rising slightly. We're seeing real estate agents actually revise their prices upwards in terms of selling prices. So it all comes down to the quality of the suburb. But certainly if you're looking for a typical suburb that has these massive high rises and you're thinking of buying an off the plan unit, it's something I'd stay well away from.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you found this video valuable and you're thinking you might like my help to help you find an investment property, then head on over to nerocall.com to discover our unique 5-step process that's helped my private client group purchase now well over $66.2 million worth of property. And then if you like what you see, you can book in for a half-hour phone consult with me personally. Either way, thanks again for watching.